Well, it's time for us to do something fun, everybody. Let's head on into a little different land and give you something to relax. And as we do our summer drive, I do want to remind everybody that if you're driving out in the summer, we're driving towards the end of the month coming up. We're going to be going into the last week soon, and we're hoping to raise more funds, of course. So that's always key. So if you like what we're doing, you think what we're doing is worthwhile as an end of the day wrap up, getting hopefully some principles out of these things and some history and knowledge. If you think what we're doing is worthwhile, please consider either contributing while we're doing the show, or if you want to subscribe to the Substack, that's a great way to do it. And we've been going along pretty well, getting a little slower now. It's sort of like trying to climb up a greased hill every month. So as we do our summer driving, we'll drive for that as well. Let's do something fun right now, everybody. Let's get into the Russian team, and I will start pressing the buttons. Let's get into some fiction land. And I got something I want to make clear when I talked about Dean Koontz, because I want to be very, very fair about his family relationship and what he said in that really interesting interview with Charlie Rose. So right now we're going to go with, you got it, it's fiction time. Going to go with the former Star Trek writing fellow side of things, and we're going to go with the theme for the Outer Limits. The control voice is going to take over. You can find the former Star Trek writing fellow channel at YouTube, at Rumble, and there's a lot of stuff that's going to be coming very soon, including, of course, the nonfiction material that we were doing. It's time for the Outer Limits control voice.
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. We will control the horizontal. We will control the vertical. We can roll the image, make it flutter. We can change the focus to a soft blur, or sharpen it to crystal clarity. For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your television set. You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to the outer limits.
Yeah, all right. Good stuff, Outer Limits. So I'm going to hop back over to the bio at Fantastic Fiction for the great and awesome Dean Koontz and show you again some of Dean Koontz's amazing pseudonyms. So W.H. Allen, isn't there a company called W.H. Allen in New England? They deliver all sorts of stuff. W.B. Allen, I think it is. David Axton, Gerda Ann Sarah, Brian Coffey, Deanna Dwyer. That he had a lot of stuff published as Deanna Dwyer, actually. K.R. Dwyer, John Hill, Lee Nichols, also as Lee Nichols, Anthony North, Richard Page, Owen West, and Aaron Wolfe. And we mentioned that way down here, his first novel that was published was 1968, Star Quest. So there is the cover of Star Quest. Classic cover on that one. Awesome. Okay. Now, one of the things that I mentioned about Dean Koontz is that in the interview that I saw that was so remarkable with Charlie Rose many, many years ago, a couple decades ago, Charlie Rose, the way they got into the topic. Oh, here's the other kitty cat, by the way. That's the other one. I don't know if you can see him. Here he goes. But anyway, he's the real big one. But so Charlie, the way they got into the topic about his Dean's family is Charlie Rose said, many of the characters in your book are strong women. And Dean says, yeah, that's a pretty good point, because Intensity was just coming out at that time. So the main character is a woman in it. And he says, yeah, that's a good point. And didn't really think about that or whatever. He says, so Charlie said, did you do that? Did you model these women after your mom? He goes, well, I might have. My mom had to be a tough woman. She was married to a sociopath for 30 years. That was and I remember that verbatim now. And Charlie Rose says, whoa, gee, that's pretty intense to say about your father. And he said, well, it's actually the truth. My dad was clinically diagnosed sociopathic. He was a drunk. He got in fights all the time. He was in jail a lot. Now, what I said on Wednesday, I want to be very careful, because he did not say that he abused his mom. He didn't say that. So I want to make sure that I make that clear. But, I guess he had like a police record and things like that. And he said, after my mom died, I took care of him for 13 years. It was the toughest thing I've ever done. And he said, yeah. And then Charlie Rose said, yeah, there's a story about your father and mother, when your mother passed away. And he said, yeah, there is actually. Yeah. When my mother was ill, she was in the hospital, and she called me into the room, and she was on her deathbed. And she said, there's something I have to tell you about your father. And then my father walked in the hospital room as she was going to tell me. She said, I'll tell you later. And she died, and I never found out what it was. And that's when Charlie said, wow, what do you think she was going to say? And he said, I think she was going to say he wasn't my genetic father. And that's where, it was just so amazing. He said, my parents had been told that they couldn't bear children, and there were fertility experiments going on in the hospital in Pennsylvania, where I was born at the time. So then Charlie Rose asked him, did you ever get the test done to find out? And he said, no, I didn't. And he said, so wait a minute, you took care of this man, this violent man, for 13 years, and you didn't know if he was really your father? He said, well, for all intents and purposes, he was my dad. He was my dad. So I took care of him. And it was a very simple, basic response from Dean Koontz, which I thought some of that is reflected in his writing. You can see it. So, again, just wanted to give you that information to let you know the background of, one of the most popular authors of the past 40 years or so, Dean Koontz, and, the type of thing that he did in his life. And so there you go. And, so many other people have we all have so many amazing things and tough strife and things and people we love and amazing things that people have done. So just wanted to give that to you. Now, again, I'm going to read to you, and I'm going to make myself big, as the cat would say in Red Dwarf. I'm going to read to you from this book, The Edge of Never, which sounds like some sort of, takeoff of a soap opera. And now, The Edge of Never. This is a collection of great short stories. J. Sheridan Le Fanu, M.R. James, as I mentioned, Clark Ashton Smith, whose writing is like poetry, and he was a great poet. Frederick Brown, Frederick Pohl, and I mentioned Poul Anderson is in this. And I was going to read a story by Poul Anderson. I was going to read this story by Poul Anderson from in here, but it's a little bit long. And part of the reason I want to is because if you're familiar with Doctor Who and the Robots of Death, the character Pool in Robots of Death, Robert Holmes named him after Poul Anderson. So, and Robert Holmes, one of the best writers, the best writer for Doctor Who of them all. And I'm friends with a couple of the guys who wrote for the new series, but nobody can touch Robert Holmes. And Terry Nation was awesome as well. Terrence Dix, both a writer and a script editor for Doctor Who. Let me tell you, if you're not familiar, if you're familiar with the Doctor Who story, The Horror of Fang Rock, which is about a lighthouse, and the Doctor and Leela are essentially trapped in a lighthouse with a group of people. It's sort of like the Agatha Christie And Then There Were None. As one by one, they keep getting killed by something that's in this lighthouse. And it's very isolated. Nobody can get to them. It's back in the 19th century. That story, Terrence Dix wrote that story, and it's 4 episodes long. It's essentially a 2-hour story, okay? He wrote it in 4 days because another story fell through. They couldn't do it. So they had Terrence Dix. He just, out of the blue, he wrote one of the best Doctor Who stories of all time. Introduced a creature called the Roton, or the Ruton. And it's a great story. It's really great. And he had 4 days. Now, I worked at Star Trek, and they would, each writer would have essentially just about a week to write a 1-hour episode. And it wasn't even an hour. It was basically 53 minutes for one episode. And a lot of times the superstructure of the story would already be handed to them because they would have purchased a story outline, an idea, a concept from a writer, and then we would have broken it down into acts and scenes and then handed it off to the writer who was assigned the story. So Terrence Dicks writing a 2-hour show in 4 days is just crazy. Wow. Terrence Dicks, I met him. He was a really nice guy, super cool guy. Okay. That was the convention where the guys picked me up at the train station and they said, "Hey, Gardner, do you mind if we pick somebody else up at another train station, one of the guests?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem. Who is it?" And they said, "Liz Sladen." I was like, uh-huh. I was in the car with Elizabeth Sladen. That was crazy. And you know what's weird? Well, anyway, God rest his soul, Liz Sladen. And her daughter, has done some acting as well. It seems like she's really nice. So anyway, that's what it's all about. Okay, so let me give you the story. This is the story. This, by the way, has the yellow sign in it by Robert W. Chambers, and also has An Inhabitant of Carcosa by Ambrose Bierce, which those two are tied together, of course. But I'm going to give you this one from Dean Koontz. It is called Nightmare Gang. Okay? Nightmare Gang by Dean Koontz. That's I'm searching for the story music. All right. Nightmare Gang by Dean Koontz from the book The Edge of Never. Cottery was a knife man. He carried 6 of them, laid flat and invisible against his lean body. And with these half-dozen confidence boosters giving him adequate courage, he challenged Lewis to a fight, for he envisioned himself as the leader of the gang. It was over inside 2 minutes. Lewis moved faster than he had any right to. He avoided Cottery's blades just as if he already knew from which directions they would be swung. He delivered several punches to Cottery that looked like a small boy's blows in a playful bout with his father, but he crippled Cottery with them as surely as he would have wielding sledgehammers. The knife man went down and threw up all over his own shoes. It was an object lesson. One was all we needed. Lewis had many holds on us. Although we did not look it, the fight with Cottery proved that Lewis had many holds on us. Although he did not look it, the fight with Cottery proved that he was somehow our physical superior. Of course, there was also the fact that only Lewis knew who we were. None of the gang members could remember any past beyond joining the gang. I'm sure that all of us at one time or another tried to find out who we were, but beyond the moment when we were enlisted by Lewis, our memories ended at a tall obsidian wall that could not be breached. Indeed, it was mentally and physically painful to try to remember. Ask Lewis, he would only smile and walk away, and that just made us twice as curious. And only Lewis knew our future. It seemed that there was some purpose to the gang, to the slow growth of our numbers, though no one could fathom what it might be. But leave the group and make our own futures? Butch, our barbarian giant, tried that. He had driven his cycle only 100 yards on his break for freedom when the cramps hit him, and he took the spill at 35 miles an hour, skinning himself real bad. Lewis was our jailer. The gang was our prison. And the heavy black cycles were the bars that contained us. Then came the run down the Atlantic coast, the pounding of the cycles in the superheated air, nights on the beaches, buffeted by the sound of the waves as we slept. Plenty of beer that Lewis brought for us. he was the only one with money. On that run, plenty of beer that Lewis bought for us. He was the only one with money. On that run, I found out what I was and what Lewis was and what was going to happen to all of us. Cruising the ocean roads to take in the tourist trap towns like White City, Ankara, Palm Beach, and Boca Raton, we made a wild sight. Flowery shirted tourists and their matronish wives always pulled off to let us go by, their faces white, the men wiping sudden perspiration from their brows. There were 12 of us in the gang, plus Lewis. As in any group, there were those who stood out. Butch was 6.5 feet and 300 pounds, another 25 pounds for boots and chains and Levi's. There was Jimmy Joe, a stiletto-thin little bastard with skin like candle wax and wild red-rimmed eyes like the eyes of a hunting hawk. He giggled and talked to himself and did not make friends. Yule was the weapons nut. His glittering head, even the eyebrows gone. Yeah, distracted your attention from the bulges in his clothing, the pistol under his left armpit, the coiled chains inside his right sleeve. The rest of the crew ranged along similar lines, though each seemed a weaker parody of those three. Except for me, I was a natural standout. Although I could be no more than 25, my hair was pure white. Eyebrows, chest, pubic, everything. They called me Old Man Toomey. And then there was Lewis. Lewis, you could call him Lou. It would be like calling Jesus. Lewis, you could not call him Lou. It would be like calling Jesus Jess. Lewis did not belong in the gang. You could see that in the fine lines of his facial bones, the aristocratic look and bearing that indicated a good private schooling and manners and carriage, as well as mathematics and grammar. He didn't have the constitution for the rugged life either. He was small, 5'8", 120 pounds, no muscle on him. Yet, he was the undisputed leader. The one who had brought us together and was planning to do with what he wanted to do with us next. It was 2:00 on the third day of our coast run, and we were just outside of Dania, Florida, when things began to change. Ahead, a souvenir shop loomed out of the sand and scrub, announced by huge hand-painted signs decorated with pictures of alligators and parrots. Lewis raised his arm and motioned us off the highway. We followed him, thumping onto the berm and crunching across the white gravel between half a dozen parked cars. When the clatter and growl of our engines died, Lewis dismounted and stood before his cycle, skinny legs spread wide. "We're casing it," he said. "Don't cause any trouble. We'll be back tonight." We had never cased a place before. This was the changing point in our existence. Somehow, I knew it was a change for the worse. We moved inside the shop, fingering the stuffed alligators, carved coconuts, shell jewelry, and genuine Indian thatchwork. The patrons stayed clear of us, their faces pale, their voices lower, more strained than the voices of people on vacation should be. The gang always garnered this sort of reaction from the straight citizens who came into contact with it. We all got a kick out of the sensation of power our appearance gave us, even though most of us must have sensed the basic psychological sickness in such an attitude. Lewis pushed past the sales counter at the back of the store and moved toward a thick, beaded curtain that closed off another room. The clerk, a tan and wizened little man with gray hair and a prune's share of whiskers, grabbed him by the arm. "Where do you think you're going?" he asked. His fear quaked down in the bottom of his throat like a wet frog. Lewis didn't answer. He turned and stared at the clerk, then down at the hand that held his arm. After a moment, the clerk let go and stood rubbing his cramped fingers. I could see dark bruises on his hand, though Lewis had not touched him. His face had gone totally white, and there was a tick beginning in the corner of his left eye. His fingers seemed paralyzed. He rubbed them frantically as if to restore circulation. Free now, Lewis continued to the beaded curtain and lifted some of the strands to peer through. I was near enough that I could see what was back there, an office of some sort, small, and chair. Lewis seemed satisfied. Burke, who made no attempt to stop him this time. "Let's go," Lewis said, walking for the door, and we went. 2 miles from the souvenir shop, we found a secluded section of beach and settled down for the evening. I was still upset about the sudden change of atmosphere, the casing of the store. My gut churned, and I felt cold and hollow, afraid of the future, simply because I had no idea what it was going to be. Butch and a spick cat named Ernesto went into Dania for some beer, and a celebration ensued. It was obvious that all of us shared the realization that something big was going to happen, something irreversible. Lewis stayed away from us, walking the beach, stopping now and then to watch a whitecap peel along and spill its froth onto the wet sand. Several times he threw his head back like a wolf and laughed, high and shrill, until he made his throat hoarse. Several times, when the moonlight limed his chalky features, he looked like one of those small glass animals you can buy in old-fashioned curio shops. The illusion was so real that I thought of stoning him, trying to break him. Then I thought of cautery and that object lesson. Half an hour after the sun had set and the first heavy waves of mosquitoes were buzzing out of the shoreline foliage, he came up the beach, kicking sand, and he stopped before us. "Let's go back," he said. I rode up front, just behind Lewis. It might have been my unreasonable terror that made me try in desperation what I did. I could close in on Lewis, I thought, take my cycle into the back of his fast enough to leap over him before we both fell. I might be hurt and hurt badly, but Lewis would get his head broken sure as hell, and then we would all be free. Whatever was about to happen wouldn't happen. I leaned into the bars and was about to accelerate when I felt a hand close over my nose and mouth, cutting off my air. I jerked my head about, could not shake it loose. I could see no hand, only feel the hand. When I was beginning to grow dizzy and the cycle was wobbling under me, the hand departed, allowing me to breathe. And Lewis had won again. We roared into the parking lot and stopped our cycles behind 4 cars, dismounted and stood there dumbly, waiting for Lewis to tell us what to do. He climbed slowly off his Triumph Tiger and turned to face us. The large orange and green neon sign that blinked and rippled overhead cast eerie shadows on his face, illuminating a wide, toothy grin that split his face like an axe wound. Then he spoke to us. 2 words. There was no way to convey the manner in which he spoke the command. He did not use his lips or tongue. Instead, the words came across the front of my mind like teletype print, burning into the softness of my brain so that I squealed. There was no denying that order, no denying it at all. Kill them. Almost as a single organism, we moved forward. the stones making brittle protests beneath our boots into the fluorescent brightness of the souvenir shop. There were 11 tourists in the shop, plus the clerk. The same little man who had tried to stop Lewis from going into the beaded curtain that afternoon. They looked up as we came in, offered us some timid reactions we were used to receiving, but that was not going to be enough to pacify us this evening. Not nearly enough. "Kill them!" Lewis said it again. He stood by the door, grinning, watching, one foot crossing over the other and his hands shoved in his jeans pockets. We moved forward, taking out the hardware we carried. Butch moved in behind me, surprisingly fast for the ox that he was, and swung a huge fist at a banker type in a loud yellow shirt and dark blue Bermuda shorts. He drove the man's nose back into his skull, splintering it into the fleshy gray of his warm brain. The banker did not even have time to scream. Yule wrapped that steel chain around his fist, moving in on some of the women, his muscular arms hanging bare from the now shirtless shirt he wore, rippled and flowed like the stalking legs of a cat. Jimmy Joe had his hands full of knives. The one in his right was dripping already. Something deep red. "Kill them!" I took my pistol out. It felt cold and unmanageable in my hand, and I wanted to drop it, but I could not. It was as if my hand moved independently of the rest of my body. A tall man with eyebrows that grew together over the bridge of his nose pushed past me, making for an open window on my right. I fired point blank into his chest. He looked startled, as if he thought the bullets were blanks and the flowing blood was ketchup, then choked. His eyes watered and tears ran down his cheeks. Then he fell over on the floor, pulling down a display of postcards with him. I dropped my pistol and grabbed some of the sales counter for support. My stomach flopped. I gagged, bent over the counter, and brought up my supper of cold chicken and beer. The rest of that time was hazy, like a sun-ruined section of film. There were shots and screams and pleading voices and blurs of color. I heard a child's cries, maybe a little girl. The crying stopped abruptly. Then we were moving out, following Lewis, boarding the cycles, and leaving the lot. We went down off the shoulder of the highway, back along the sand to where we had eaten. I fell off my machine when it was parked and rolled over in the sand, face down, trying to think. Sometime later, Butch tapped me on the shoulder and offered me a beer. I declined, then rolled on my back to see what was happening among the rest of them. It was not what I had expected. Jimmy Joe was standing in the center of the group, playing the part of a woman whose throat he had slit, alternately taking his own role in the affair. When he reached the point where he skewered her throat, the gang laughed, and other stories began being exchanged. Someone broke out several bottles of vodka when the beer ran out and the party got noisier. I stood up and pushed my way through the gang, trying to reach Lewis where he sat next to the tide line. I passed Yule, who had droplets of blood spattered across his bald head like freckles. Jimmy Joe was honing his knives on Coral. Butch, his eyes very round and wild, was licking an unknown victim's blood from his hands. When I reached Lewis, he turned and shook his head to let me know he would not talk with me. I tried to say something anyway, but there was an invisible hand in my throat that stopped the words from forming. much like the hand that had almost smothered me when I had thought of killing him. I stood, watching him for some time. He was reading a newspaper, the Miami Herald. After a long time, he carefully tore an article from the front page, folded it, and tucked it in his shirt pocket. Standing, he called to the gang and explained that he would be gone until morning and that we were to enjoy ourselves. Then he was on his tiger, moving across the sand, and gone. Everyone was silent for a moment, for we all knew what this meant. The only times Lewis left us were when he was going to recruit a new gang member. When the idea had sunk in, the revelry began again, slowly at first, then picking up speed and becoming boisterous and jubilant. I went to the edge of the water and picked up the paper. There was no way to tell what the story had been about, for he had removed all of it. Then I remembered. The Gulf station, a quarter of a mile back along the road. It was highly possible the station had a vendor for the Herald there, or at least that the attendant had a copy of its own. Somehow the story in the paper tied in with this new recruit. I guess I had some idea that it would shed some light on my own past as well. Without thinking of the cycle, I struck out along the beach, crawled up the embankment to the highway, and walked to the service station. There were 2 copies of the Herald left. When I was about to buy one, I remembered I had no money. Luckily, a car drove up, requiring the attendant's attention, which left me free to steal. I ran all the way back to our camp, fighting the urge to look at it. On the beach, I spread out the mutilated paper that Lewis had been reading, then opened my whole copy and compared them to see what had been torn out. I read the article twice to make certain I was not wrong. Then I threw both papers into the water and went back to my cycle. I did not sleep that night. In the morning, when Lewis came back, I was awake, my eyes stinging, but my mind alert. He brought the new recruit with him, a fellow named Burton Cade. He was the same Burton Cade that had been the focal point of that newspaper article. He matched the front page picture in every detail. 11 months ago, Cade had used a shotgun on his mother and father while they had lain asleep in bed. Then he had gone on to systematically beat to death his 2 young children, one 8 and one 10. He had been executed yesterday morning. There was a very ugly thought in my mind, one that I did not want to face up to. To avoid it, I began thinking rapidly on other things of Lewis and what he might be. A demon? That seemed unlikely. Why would a demon have to summon up a dead maniac to commit violence when the demon himself could do far worse with his own powers? No. No, not a demon. Not a devil. I began to remember things about Lewis, the things that started fitting together in a very unpleasant way. There had been the time he had defeated Cottery with childish blows. That time Butch had gotten cramps and wrecked because he was trying to leave, though Lewis had not visibly touched him. The invisible hand. These were examples of what? Mind over matter, one of those extra sensory perceptions you hear so much about. In the last instance, there had been a case. It had known what this skinny little monster did not seem like the first of some new race, the first ESPer, Esper, the first man able to warp the realities of life and death to recover a body from the grave. Yet he was the first of a new race, and tainted with madness. Maybe that is the price to be paid in this new evolutionary step. Maybe all ESPers will be monsters like Lewis, or perhaps nature will correct this mistake and make them benevolent. I don't really care. All I know or care about is that Lewis is a beast, and it is Lewis who is here now. Lewis who shapes my future. And what was my past? What did I do that was so horrible as to turn every hair on my body white, even though I am only 25? I do know what is going to happen to us. There have been 2 massacres since that first, and there will be many more. We will never be caught, for Lewis uses his psychic powers to search for clues before we leave a scene, uses them to wipe the minds clean of anyone who accidentally sees us. I am afraid that we are immortal. We will go on killing until even the sun is black and hard and dead. We have been brought back from the grave, and even Baker's dozen of ghouls. We are the nightmare gang that sweeps, gibbering, out of the night and lays waste to whatever comes before it. We are the nightmare gang. We kill while Lewis watches, laughing, clutching his sides with his skinny arms. And the worst thing, the very worst thing, is that I think I am beginning to enjoy myself. Dean Koontz, The Nightmare Gang. That published, let me see, originally published in 1970 by Lancer Books. And it appeared in Infinity One, The Nightmare Gang by Dean R. Koontz. I flubbed up a couple times. I will go in and edit those for the final version that goes out on the former Star Trek Writing Fellow channel. And I hope that that was good for you. I hope that the camera wasn't jumping around too badly or whatever. That would be super disappointing. Let's check this out. I hope that to the bottom and see what's happening. Intense. Hey, was the sound okay for you guys? Because otherwise I can read it again some other time for the separate video. A lot of times, if I'm full on the screen, sometimes if there's a bunch of tabs that are open on the computer, it'll slow things down, and occasionally we'll get like a little skip in the audio. It was great. Thank you, Harry. Thank you, Birdhouse. Oh, you guys are great. Thanks, guys. Thanks. I wish we had a campfire and some marshmallows right now. You know, it'd be great. Summertime rolling along, the fireflies coming out and everything. That'd be awesome, wouldn't it? Oh, hey, let me give you the rest of what I've gotten written on Transmitter. Okay. So I'm just going to go like this and do this up with Transmitter. It should be, I think it's going to be close to open here. Let me just reattach this. Go like this. Okay, cool. Go like this. All right. As I work in the background in the Russians, let me know if there are any writers that you like a lot. Dean Koontz, obviously, you know, super popular. Any novelists you really like, just name them anytime. And I'm going to go with, right now, transmitter with that funky spelling. Transmitter. All right? So there we go. This happens over in England. So here we go. Think she'll be watching? White House? Hebert leaned out the van window and into spectral mist, turning away from the side view to yell over the throaty growl of the interior. No, not that old bitch. I mean Ash. Barton swung the massive camera case from the back and laid it beside the pod. Who cares? I gave her up like a bad habit weeks ago. Then he lifted both and gorilla walked the burdens to beside Hebe, tilting his head westward in the direction of the old Georgian on the glistening, overgrown hill. Too bad for her. This is just her kind of place. The mix of engine exhaust and fecund autumnal rot blended with the cold and wet, but Hebert kept his sleeves rolled up and exposed his tattooed elbow as he surveyed the derelict display. She must have been a right masochist if you think she'd like taking on that kind of fixer-upper. Barton smirked, wiped his jet-black cowlick off his damp and pallid brow. Nah, just her Gothic thing. That's what brought us together. Typical effed-up bird. Got into all this occult shit and seance nonsense in her teens and thought I loved it too because of all our shows. She stuck with it for a few months until she realized none of this was real for us except the bank deposits. Hebe nodded and reached for his half-smoked pack, popped one out and handed it to Barton before taking one himself and pressing the lighter into the dash. Thanks, man. Barton's voice came to him as he took the red-hot burner and touched it to the fag. Then he handed the still potent coil on its handle back to Hebe, and they both took long drags of the mentholate and the relative calm. Don't know why we didn't just pre-shoot some B-roll last week when we got inside. The way they set up this production, there's no need to lug all that shite into the house up those effing stairs if we're going to pretend the visuals are lost minutes in. In the sizzle of the mist, Barton's cigarette lit up, and he sucked a great breath of the burning, bound leaves. Did you mention that all to Malcolm? Sure as hell did. They could be getting shots of the rats and trash around London instead of having you set up the rig for the establishing live feed before the proverbial lights go dark. The rest is just audio. And, of course, our effects and a little play-by-play. Barton dragged air through the leaves some more, withdrew the cigarette and sneered at its orange tip. He tell you anything about the plan then? I don't know what you mean. Well, there's a reason we can't go to tape tonight, man, said Barton, his voice filling with that velvety, self-confident tone usually reserved for his broadcasts. Hebert squinted at him, half smiled, raising his brows in an expression of amused curiosity, as if to coax more. 'Cause tonight's little play-by-play isn't gonna be according to plan. At least not the plan we gave the Beeb. Really? Now Hebert did smile. His dark eyes, still sharp and full of inexhaustible 20-something rebellion, seemed to grow bright in the gathering gloom. Mm-hmm. Barton sucked in more smoke, blew it skyward as if he were a steam engine, and began his satisfied-sounding reply. I figured if this might be our last show, thanks to Holy Thighs Mary and her White House protest patrol, then we make this one for the history books. Oh, I think I like that, brother. Yeah. If White House and her knickers-bunched bitch brigade are so close to shutting us down with their complaints because they say our ghost patrols are immoral or irreligious or scandalous or who knows what shite she's come up with today, then the script I handed the high-ups back in London won't be what goes out tonight. No effing way. Seriously? Seriously. Oh, what about the delay? If you start blasting truth bombs live in an hour from now, then Of course, they'll switch out the feed and claim technical difficulties. Again, Barton took a long drag. This time he held it a lot longer and spoke as the smoke glided out his nostrils, as if the breath of a smug, ready-to-strike dragon. The delay won't be a problem if I paid off Merritt to, he cocked his head and grinned at Hebert, suddenly need to hit the head and leave the control room locked while he's away. Oh, nice idea, Hebert observed. But that'll only buy you a few minutes. A few's all I need. But I'll have more than that anyhow. Even if they find the right keys to get inside, they need a union man to do the switching, or else they can run the risk of a labor contract suit first thing Monday morning. Hebert nodded. Oh, this is going to be good. And after the show, as the Bible thumpers blow up the country, well, what's in the cards then? Well, then, I disappear for a while. I take off for a few days so I can't be asked any damn stupid questions. You're in the clear. And the show, well, the show burns bigger than anything in years. Hebert mulled it over. And the choice of locale? Added his friend, directing a thumb back over his shoulder. Well, that's intentional. Its history bolsters our message. You'll see what I mean. All right, mate. If this looked to be the final show and it's the way you want to go out across what's left of Rule Britannica, I'm all for it. F them and leave the sticks up their arses. The two co-workers went silent, and the mist thickened into small, bashful drops. After more time-savoring drags, Hebe chucked his stub into a puddle beside the right front tire, seeing it sizzle, bob, and float to the surface. You want a hand? He asked, nodding at the gear. Barton still had some fag to go. He withdrew his smoke and pulled a Sisyphean half-smile as he looked at the burden. Nah, you did the heavy work running that damn triax from the third floor. Along the wet, leaf-littered, moss-split stone walk that passed through the iron gate, through the eons, and towards the granite stairs and overgrown front hill, a thick black line of insulated cable stretched like an enormous dormant worm. They regarded it, a modern dragon of copper and rubber, carrying the fire of electricity to the camera and mic when needed, and returning the electrons when the shoot began. Wouldn't it be great if we could run the CCU off a SEP cam signal and XLR through the air, instead of expensive line and relay EQs, when the distance to the van reaches its limit? Hebert asked. Barton tilted his head, and his nearly black orbs traced the glistening line away from the van, up the hill. You mean like localized RF transmission of some sort, like from the cam to the van? Yeah. Oh, that'd take a hell of a lot of bandwidth, though, man. Yeah, good point. Barton tossed his coffin nail filter and grabbed the equipment. Still, that's not a bad idea. Maybe someday, Hebe. And keep applying that wizard mind. Then we'll trash all this shite and the rubbish workers can handle it after they end their strike sometime next century. Hebert gave him a smile and thumbs up. Barton lifted the heavy lute and half turned to speak. I'll be as quick as I can. Watch for the signal, and we'll talk over the phones and mic. Yeah, sure thing, mate. And with a smile and a momentary glance as he shifted the burden, the slender man stepped beneath the arched ironwork with its large W at the apex, through the half-open gate, and into the yard. 25 minutes passed before Barton had the cam on the pod and the lights properly adjusted. Give us white balance when you can, Hebert told him through the headset. The little van hummed with the vibe of the generator and stank of acrid fumes. Will do. Barton's voice was strong in his ear. A horizontal shadow of him slid across the screen, projected by one of the lights that poured through a large rectangle, presumably the doorway, and falling on a chintzy, moth-chewed, stained oval of what once might have been a rather expensive braided rug. Without white balance, everything on his monitor screen had a kind of bluish tone, as if the whole place had been painted the color of a stillborn child. But in a moment, Barton laid down the white balance plate and zoomed in, pressing the proper key on the camera to focus and lock the tone. Then he zoomed out, and like a first-time sailor recovering after a storm, the carpet took on a healthy glow. The bedroom around it adopted ruddy hues of brown, russet, alabaster, ivory, and brass, and the immense bed offered more detail, dominating the right sides of the screen like some kind of fabled ocean liner, rising from the brine wine floor, from the dark shadows beneath the aged yellow cover, to the four-post canopy that hovered in a state of gauzy, eroded diffusion many feet above. Hebe sensed practiced professionalism as Barton fixed the focus, pulled back, and left the camera where it would remain, staring at him during the start of the show, before going utterly black for tonight's ghostly spectacle. Did you ever read The Silent World by Jacques Cousteau, Barton? He said into the headset mic. His partner stepped into view, holding his microphone in one hand and pressing his hearing piece into his ear with the other. No, though I've heard it's fascinating. Why do you ask? Well, there's a lot in there about his efforts during the early days of the aqualung, the air tank technology, and so on, when the germs occupied France. Lots of trial and error and risks, as he and his buddy, Dumas, I think was his surname, flouted the Nazi orders and swam around when and where they weren't allowed. Adventurers, eh? Well, it wasn't full-on fighting, but they resisted in any small way they could. Cousteau and that Dumas bloke initially tried using spears to fish deep in a couple bays without being detected, but they realized it took more energy to catch the fish than they were getting back from the fish, so they gave that up. But the reason I mention it is because sitting here with the stench of the generator got me remembering that there was this one time when Cousteau was on his own in a wreck off the coast of Greece, using a track line as he went deeper into its crumbling structure, and he began to get confused and tired and dizzy. He was effed, but he was lucky enough to have the line and the mental strength to focus on it and draw himself back. When he got to the surface, he was barely conscious, and they dragged him on the deck as if he were a dead fish himself. He slowly recovered, and then they realized they'd filled the tanks near the exhaust pipe for the actual compressor, and the gas he was breathing was largely carbon monoxide. Holy shit. Yeah. I sometimes think about that when I'm at a job and the generator is upwind. Not that it worries me. It just jogs the old gray cells I have left. Good book if you can get it. I'll look into it. I got a little more time with the starlit girl in my rear view now. Oh, hey, speaking of gray, you all set in the white balance? Yeah, great. I got a half hour before we count down. Going to take a leak outside, then I'll be back for the list. Righto. Hebe got to work on the uplink, opening the signal to and from London, double-checking with Merritt on the satellite window for transmission, then ran the van radio and savored the glorious reports of a volcanic summer that finally had ended, even as its ash continued to collect on the sidewalks and stoops of the tired old city. There should have been a promo for Ghost Walk with Barton Trask wedged into the reports, pointing like a big index finger to BBC4 telly and reminding people to ready bunkers behind the sofa. But no commercial sounded, leaving Hebert with that empty feeling he occasionally got when a broadcast he was going to handle got no push, no confirmation. And sans that sense of near validation, he did not know anyone would be watching. He and Barton, in essence, could be doing a pantomime, entertaining only each other. "What's the word, Watson?" came Barton's voice, and Hebert turned back to the main feed screen, where Barton had reappeared and was walking with the microphone towards the bed. "I see you chose the luxury suite, my friend." And that's where we stop. So they're going to be getting ready to do the ghost show. And I will check in to see what you think. Oh, Birdhouse. Oh, Birdhouse says, I learned something new every time I watch Liberty Conspiracy. So perhaps that information about the Silent World story. I've mentioned it maybe before. I think I have. I have, but you probably didn't get to see that if that's what you're mentioning. It is pretty amazing what that guy, he and Dumas were doing. Oh, thanks, Harry. Harry says, we all do Bird. Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm going to start doing more nonfiction book stuff as well. I was really encouraged when Ashley and Brian were talking last night on Ashley's Think, Change, Repeat. That was real nice. That, like, Brian mentioned that he had learned some stuff from me. And they talked about Kenneth Royce, the book that he wrote called Hologram of Liberty. And he wrote it as Boston Tea Party. I think he wrote it as Kenneth Royce, actually. But he has other books, this Boston Tea Party, all about the usurpation by the Constitution taking the place of the Articles of Confederation and stuff. And they mentioned North Carolina, the last of the states to join in the South in the Civil War. And of course, Rhode Island, holding off on even having a vote on the Constitution because it was seen by so many as a usurpation. Lots of interesting history things. And I want to show you something. Actually, I'm going to do this now. I want to get into my history. I won't show the whole show, but I want to show you interesting books reviewed, because last night's episode of Interesting Books Reviewed was really, really good. And it's 10 books for false flag season. There'll probably be a commercial before this. So let me bring, yeah. Okay, so this is the channel that I like so much. And this is Interesting Books Reviewed that I want to just show you. This is a really, really good one. 10 books for false flag season.
Well, it is false flag season, but Bookman, you're probably being recorded as saying, I thought it was blackmail season or hantavirus season. I barely had time to take down my blackmail decorations. But yes, friends, we are in fact back in false flag season again.
This is classic. So it's about a half hour long. You see 39 minutes. Really, really interesting. Lots of great stuff in there. It is a great, great episode. I won't show you the whole thing or anything like that. Just go to Interesting Books Reviewed. And I'm going to start doing more of that for nonfiction stuff myself. So I'll be doing, different nonfiction books and things that hopefully will be interesting, and you might want to pick it up yourself and see what you think. And then we can compare notes sometime. That'll be a lot of fun. Maybe we'll do some book club stuff. That'll be really fun. So I'll leave it at that. And thank you all. I can't wait to finish Transmitter. It's going to be really, really good. And I think you're going to enjoy it greatly. And in the meantime, I will say fare thee well. Again, thank you for being here. Have a great start of the summer night. We're almost at the 21st, the longest day of the year. Our summer drive is going strong. And if you want to support the show, that's always awesome. You can go over to Substack, sign up for a few bucks a month. That's a great way to start things off. And you'll get the news notes every Monday through Friday. And we're going to start adding short stories and cool stuff for the subscribers. I can't wait. And of course, if you want to contribute over at Rumble, you can do that as well. And in the meantime, I will just check in with final thoughts for anybody. Yeah, Birdhouse knows this guy's videos are great. You guys already know. I figured you guys. Yep, absolutely. Appreciate the Studio 2 support team. Leo deserves a raise card, man. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know where he is. He'll have to get up on the table behind me. They're such good guys, I tell you. Oh, yeah, it was a really bad night with one of those headaches last night too. But I was able to do the audio edits, put the podcast out last night, and it was intense. I was in so much pain, I was drooling. It was really crazy. It was crazy. I can't wait for this to stop. But it's weird. I got a message from a friend of mine who also has gone through the long COVID thing, and he got over it. I don't think he was. I think he even said in the message that he wasn't hit as hard as I've been hit. But he got over it with certain types of practices and things like that, and he had some good tips. I'm doing a lot of that already, which is super cool. I'm on the right track. And I'm hoping to get him on to talk a little bit about how he got over that stuff. Really good guy, really good dude. Whatever you might be going through, more power to you, and great respect. Just can't go wrong. Thank you all. All right. And I'll leave you with some good music. I'm going to go with, let's see. Let's hit a little something from, how about some Shriekback? Oh, wait. There's one thing I want to do before I go. I've got to do this. I'm going to go over into my email just to let you know. Shriekback is doing a fundraiser for their next album. Okay. So let me go over here because Barry Andrews sent over this. So we're not going to stop the show quite yet. Okay. Yeah, here he goes. Here he goes. This is Barry Andrews, and hopefully it's going to pop up.
Hello everybody, Barry Andrews from Shriekback here again. Still crowdfunding like a mofo. We're on our 13th day now, I think, and we've got about another 20 grand to raise. So it's kind of hair raising, but it's probably going to be all right. So as part of the general push towards July the 1st, I thought I'd show you something rather behind the scenes. This is what we get up to in our dirty practices. I'm going to deconstruct part of the new title track of the album, Things with Heads, and show you how it's prepared to go forward to Martin Barker next week, where he's going to put some drums on the thing. This is Things with Heads, all laid out on Logic. Hear a little bit of it. Indulge me here, will you? I'm full of mineral trauma. If I was 7 alarms, I'll make a tune and I'll kill you. There's an expensive confusion between the hunting and the sky. So what this starts off with, and what we have at the moment, is a guide drum track, which is this little beast. Nice little cowbell in there. Here's the bass, synth bass. Tambourine. And rather satisfyingly, me playing guitar. Trying to channel Wilco Johnson in as far as that's possible.
Okay, so I'll leave it at that. Now, I get the emails from Shriekback, Barry, and then Barry actually communicates with me occasionally and stuff. So I'm hoping to get Barry on. I know he's going to be super busy, so hopefully we'll be able to do it to promote the fundraiser. But if you want to look up, it's all one word, Shriekback, Shriekback, Shriekback. Okay, and so check out Shriekback, and if you want to contribute, Shriekback, Shriekback. Just look up Shriekback crowdfunder, and you can go to the official Shriekback website, and you can contribute if a couple people want, if you're interested in their music. And I'll leave you with one of the other songs that they put together through one of their crowdfunders, and I helped fund some of these things. And like I said, they're such good guys that on June 3rd, 2017, they were going to be playing a concert. You can actually see footage. I'll play you some footage from it. It's wonderful footage of things like Hammerheads and stuff like that. And on my birthday, and they invited me to go to the show at one of the London, like something Apollo theaters or whatever that was out there. And it was one of the first times they had played in like 25 years. And they'd done a crowdfunder for their tours and stuff like that. And it was just great. Really, really good footage. So if you look up Shriekback Live, you'll see some of that footage from June 3rd, 2017. And they actually have a thank you inside like their Return to the Stage book that they have, and they thanked me in it, which was really nice. So Barry's a great guy. And so, yeah, if you want to support Shriekback, they're terrific, and you'll be able to get, like a download of the album and stuff like that. If you like their music, you might be able to, get it for somebody else. They have a lot of other offerings too. You can get like lyric books or signed postcards and stuff like that, and have them sent out to friends and stuff. They've got cool T-shirts.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to the outer limits.